Okay, now for the first-hand account of what really took place yesterday at that town hall meeting by Rick Snyder when the Lansing mayor, Verge Bernero, invited himself to the party and showed up. Kyle Melinn from MERS News, who was right there when it happened. Good morning. Thanks for joining us here in our Gillespie Group storefront studio.
Good morning, Michael Patrick. My pleasure to be here.
Tell us what happened, where it was, and what you saw, and fascinating.
Well, it was really exciting. You know, for a journalist, so far it seems like the campaign has been so scripted, and to see something so spontaneous happen was really exciting. You know, I showed up to this town hall in Westland. You know, Rick Snyder's had like 50, this was the 59th town hall, where he invites people to come, and they all sit around. He stands up there, and he talks, and he takes a couple questions, and I was told to be prepared that it's very boring. So I brought a little extra work with me just in case I was starting to doze to sleep.
Because supposedly he just, when he answers questions, he uses his normal campaign stump speech, right?
Exactly. So I didn't really think I was going to see anything new. And actually, I hung out in the parking lot for a little longer than I was expecting to, because I thought that a group called Progress Michigan was going to have a chicken out front. And I wanted to see somebody in a chicken suit strolling around, because the people of the facility, Hawthorne Country Club in Westland, were getting ready to kick the guy off if he really showed up. So anyway, I went inside.
The chicken suit is to call Rick Snyder a chicken for not wanting to debate, right?
Correct.
That's their point.
Correct.
Okay.
So I walk in, and who do I see in there but Verge Bernero and Cullen Schwartz, his spokesperson, leading a pack of journalists and cameras out into the lobby of the Hawthorne Country Club, saying that he's got this letter in his hand, and he wants to restart negotiations on debates by just being a man-on-man type thing. Why don't we just sit down to coffee, just the two of us? No consultants or lawyers or political people, just the two of us. And in 20 minutes over coffee, we can get this thing straightened out. And so as Verge is in the midst of this, Rick Snyder comes out into the lobby with his campaign people and says, Verge, why don't you come inside? And Verge Bernero hands him the letter and says, Mr. Snyder, I don't want to break up your event here. I just want to give you this, and hopefully we can meet for coffee and we can talk about debates. And Rick Snyder said, Verge, I already offered 3 debates and you turned me down. Well, come inside and let's go inside and let's talk right now. And Verge said, okay, let's do it. So on just the spur of the moment thing, Rick Snyder led him into the room where they were going to have this town hall, and Verge Bernero followed him right in, took a front row seat, and Rick Snyder just kind of launched into his discussion, his regular stump speech, if you will. It was, since I had a tape recorder, I could actually record how many minutes it was. It was 18 minutes long. And then Verge got up. He invited Verge to start talking, and you know, Verge is always on his game. You know, he doesn't really need a lot of prep. So he did okay. I mean, he tried to make some jokes. He tried to lighten the crowd up, because obviously this was 95% Republicans. And by and large, that first 10 minutes that Verge talked, the crowd was pretty well behaved. I mean, obviously there wasn't a lot of clapping going on. I mean, when Rick Snyder talked, there was a lot of clapping and hooting, and I think they gave him a standing O once or twice. So there was kind of a mild courtesy clap, and the one woman said, well, at one point, Verge Bernero said he asked for the time because he doesn't want to take up any time. And one of the women said, yeah, we came to see Rick. And there started to be a little rumbling, like things were going to get a little nasty. And Rick stood up and he said, no, the floor is Verge, or Mr. Bernero's. Let him, finish. And so he talked for 10 minutes. And then Rick stood up and said, okay, let's just take some questions. And they took, I think it was 7 questions from the audience, and there was one on corrections, higher education spending, one on community colleges, Medicaid, and they just went back and forth, and they took turns. They each took, 3-5 minutes. I mean, nobody hogged the mic. They all took turns. They didn't insult anybody. They didn't go negative on them, and I think Snyder actually thought Verge was going to start bringing up outsourcing and Gateway. He didn't do any of that. And Snyder in turn didn't call him a career politician or any of that, even though I think Verge was expecting it. And then at the end, Snyder says, you want to do closing statements? And Verge's like, yeah, sure. And so Rick said, all right, let's do 2-3 minutes. Go ahead, start. And Verge said, okay. And so he gave a 2-minute closing statement. Snyder gave up a 2-minute closing statement. And they shook hands a couple times. And they went their ways.
Did they share the same microphone?
No, Rick Snyder had a little microphone on his lapel,
Oh, okay.
and Verge had the big mic that he was holding.
Let's face it, that's what a modern debate is anyway. I mean, really, there's not a lot of back and forth usually between candidates. They're little answers to questions and back and forth, aren't they?
Yeah, and you know what? As I was sitting there, I was thinking this very same thing. You know, if this was actually a televised debate, I think we would see something very similar, except a very tighter time frame and probably a little, nastier, with a little bit of punch in there. But since they were in front of a crowd that I don't think was going to tolerate that, they were on their best behavior.
What does that say about Verge Bernero that he would turn up at a Snyder event like that?
That guy is a street fighter, isn't he? I mean, being in Lansing, does that surprise you really? It was kind of a shock to see him there, but it really isn't that surprising to see Verge Bernero there. I mean, he is unconventional in that throughout his career that I've covered him, he's had a knack for getting into the news. He's been able to keep this debate story alive all weekend and then all day yesterday. And for him to just pop up at this thing, and I don't know if he invited any media or not. I don't know if he keyed anyone in or not. I know WXYZ was there, and so maybe he let them know, but he certainly didn't let any print know. Because there was, outside of the Free Press and maybe an AP reporter who were going to be there anyway, there was no one there.
But, he did invite himself to the party or crash the party, if you want to say. But he sounds like, from what you're saying, because you saw it firsthand, he did so in a polite fashion.
Yeah, it wasn't like he just stood up in the town hall and got, unruly. He just stood outside. He said, I just have this letter. I just want to give it to Mr. Snyder, and I'll just let him go do his thing. And he told Rick that when he came out. Listen, I just want to give you this. I want you to do your thing, and I'm going to leave. And it was Rick who invited him inside the meeting and said, no, I want you to sit and hear this, and we'll take some questions, and we'll let the public hear us.
And Mayor Bernero initially demurred and said, no, that's okay, and he insisted, come on in.
That's correct, yeah.
If it were a debate, who won? You know how he.
Let me tell you what. I saw Rick Snyder a year ago in Mackinac Island, and I got to say he's improved. And I didn't really think he was that bad then. Compared to Dick DeVos, I thought he was really good then. He's gotten a lot better since. He had a lot of fire, and he was very comfortable because I think he was already mentally prepared to do it. Do the town hall where Verge was just doing it on the fly. And so, I think they both did well. Obviously, Rick Snyder had the better stump speech and I think was better prepared. But, Verge has just talks very well anyway. Like folks have said on the show already, he was a high school champion debater, so it's not like he was a slouch. But Rick seemed very comfortable, and if the two were on a debate in the big stage, I don't think Rick would make a fool of himself at all. He's done so many public appearances. He's almost become an expert on this in just the month or the year or so he's been a gubernatorial candidate.
Based on what you saw in the room, do you think any of those Republicans, I don't know how many of them would be undecided in that room, maybe some, would have switched over their support to Bernero?
Well, I think he earned their respect, if nothing else. Actually, there was a woman who was the person who asked the final question, said, I'm a lifelong Democrat. I always voted Democrat, but I voted for you, Rick Snyder, in the gubernatorial primary on the Republican side for the first time ever. And then she asked her question about how are you going to be able to bring different people of different backgrounds together. And they both answered that question. I thought they both did a pretty good job. But, it's hard to say afterwards if she would have actually switched her vote or not. I don't know if Verge really switched anybody's mind up. But I think most everybody there was just entertained and just tickled pink that it was breaking down right there in front of them in Westland.
Yeah, they were in the right place at the right time for sure, and so were you.
Yeah.
That's what you do, though.
Yeah, well, you know what, though? MERS doesn't usually go to those kind of things. It was kind of a spur-of-the-moment thing that we went to. It's, these town halls seem to be where Rick Snyder's making his news, and we wanted to go down to one on a non-session day and just see what it was like. I didn't know it was going to turn into maybe the only debate that we have here in the gubernatorial election.
So just a couple of seconds left. Who wins in this whole scenario? And now I'm not talking about last night, but in the media ripple that will result.
I hope that the public actually wins in that the two actually start talking again and get some real debates, because that's really what this is about. It's about people learning about Rick Snyder and Verge Bonero, because outside of Lansing, folks don't know Verge Bonero from anybody. And really, as far as Rick Snyder goes, who knows Rick Snyder too? They know his commercials, they know he's a nerd, but I think they need to learn more about him as well.
Mirrors News is one way you can do that. It's mirsnews.com. Kyle Melinn is the editor there, and if you'll log on, find them online, you can learn more about the candidates and the issues. And thank you very much for being here this morning.
My pleasure, Michael.